Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Duo here, and today I'll be bringing you my episode breakdown for RWBY Volume 8, Chapter 2. Now, this is my first chapter breakdown for RWBY, so it may not be the best quality yet in terms of the way that I present the information, but I should be getting better with each of these that I do. So any feedback is appreciated. I also won't be including many referential images. I've got 3 in mind for this episode and a scene, but I will try to increase the amount with each breakdown that I do. There will also be a counter on the screen, likely in this corner over here, but I'm not going to say what that is for until it's relevant to the information that I'm discussing. Anyway, the chapter begins with Crow and Robert in separate jail cells. Crow is sitting in his, staring down at Clover's pen, while Robin is pacing in hers and angrily ranting. She says, "This is your fault. You know that, don't you?" And it's framed as though she's saying it to Crow, but as she continues ranting, it pans around and shows us that she's actually talking to Jacques, as the 3 of them and Watts have connected cells. Jacques plays the victim card, as always, saying that while his hands may not be clean, he wasn't the one calling the shots for, or even aware of, Salem's plan, and that at least he's not a murderer, like someone, and turns to look at Crow, but Robin quickly refutes the fact that Crow killed anyone, outright saying he didn't kill anyone. There's a brief exchange between Watts and the others. He says that they're all stuck together for a while, so they might as well get comfortable, to which Jacques gets all smug and he's like, "You really think Whitley won't have already called everyone that I know in Atlas? I won't be in here for very long." But before he can gloat anymore, he gets interrupted by Robin yelling at him to shut up, and the door to the confinement room opening, as 3 soldiers enter the room to take Watts with them, but not before smacking him with the butt of one of their guns first. The last we see of the remaining 3 prisoners is Robin saying how she hates being unable to do anything, and Crow telling her that they can do something. They can kill the man who put them in there. So, Ironwood. And Tyrion, but he's meaning Ironwood here. We then cut to a news report from the streets of Mantle, giving a brief recap of how the last volume ended, with the military being removed back to Atlas and the Grim Armada arriving over the tundra, before getting interrupted and having his microphone taken by Joanna, who tells everyone in Mantle that Ironwood has abandoned them and that they will need to gather what they can before heading towards the crater if they want to survive, because once they're all together, they can easily be protected from the grim hordes. As she's ending her message to the people, we see that the Mantle team, Yang, Oscar, Ren and Jean, whom I will be referring to as Mantle team throughout the rest of this video, they reach Pietro's workshop and dispatch of the 2 Atlesian knights that are inside. We then see a couple of events from the different teasers and trailers, so I'll just be listing them off rather than going too in depth into them. The first one we see is teaser trailer 3, with Mantle team's reaction to finding the hoverbikes followed by the scene of them riding through the streets and Yang doing her flip off the wall, which was actually edited slightly between the episode and the trailer. I'll get to that later. After that, it shows teaser 2, where Mantle Team is door knocking to assist in evacuating before getting interrupted by 2 sabers. 2 things to note before I start breaking down the next scene, and these are: 1, the lady standing next to the snow shovel TM is revealed to be her mother. The age lines have been added in between when the trailer was released and the episode, so I said in the trailer breakdown that I thought it might be her wife or girlfriend or partner, but that was before the age lines were added and they looked like they had the same age model. And B, Jean's shield grenade, it only covered about half the street because it was still to the left and right of the shield that the sabers could have gone down, yet they were pouring at the shield like there was no other way around. So this got me thinking, maybe hard light has a sort of bug zapper effect on Grimm, like they feel compelled to attack it because it's there in front of them, like how bugs are attracted to the light of a bug zapper. The next scene to break down is the continuation of that scene. Oscar asks if the Grimm have already started their advancements into Mantle, and Yang says that those are just stragglers from last night, before asking Ren if he can use his semblance to mask everyone that is there, with Jean's help, much to Ren's annoyance. Now, we still don't know what's exactly happening with Ren, but his agitation is picked up by one of the kids, who starts crying before John reassures him that it'll work. But before they can start off towards the crater, the elder lady starts complaining about how much she'd prefer to head to Atlas and have to reside in the slums. But she's quickly put in her place by Yang, who bluntly tells her that Atlas has deemed you all unnecessary to save, yet the faunus in the slums, they're willing to give you whatever they can to help you survive this, whether or not you actually deserve it. Her daughter quickly changes the subject by just popping her head in and being like, "I'll go grab our stuff then." We then cut ahead a few minutes to when they're all walking through the streets of Mantle towards the crater, with the elder woman still complaining about not going to Atlas, albeit she's doing it much quieter so Yang can't hear her, and her daughter is continuing to scold her behavior and saying she's setting a bad example. While the 2 civilians are having this exchange, Oscar thinks to himself how it shouldn't be so hard to get people to cooperate, and Osborn cuts in to say that it's something that's beginning to really worry him. The 2 souls have a back and forth about how Oscar thinks Osborn should have just stayed away, and how he was finally beginning to feel like he was a valuable member of the team on his own, while Osborn reminds him that he was never truly gone, he was always there, and that their souls are still on the path to merging, even though neither party actually wants that to happen. Osborn doesn't want to take over Oscar. Oscar doesn't want to be taken over. The final part of this exchange is one of 2 scenes in this episode that reminds me of the conversation between Frodo and Gandalf at the end of Return of the King, I think it was, where Frodo says, "I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had ever happened." And Gandalf replies, "So do all who live to see such times, but it is not for them to decide." As in, I wish there was a way this could have been avoided, well, it was going to happen to someone. It chose you. The last we see of Mantle Team for this section of the episode is Ren's semblance starting to flicker from the strain it is putting on him, though this is actually the first time we've seen Ren's semblance falter, including when he was masking the majority of a train. So it's less that the strain of masking the people of the town that's affecting him, and it's more the mindset that he's in isn't allowing him to concentrate fully on shielding these people, because his mind keeps picking up different trains of thought and that. John tries to give him a pep talk to help, but Ren quickly and bluntly shuts him down, saying, "I just need to concentrate." While this is happening, Oscar and Ozpin are finishing up their conversation, and Ozpin tells him that for the time being they need to find a way for not just the two of them to work together, but all of them. And as he says all of them, it pans up to show Atlas, so I'm guessing that's alluding to an Ozpin Ironwood conversation soon, provided some things get sorted out first. We then cut back to Atlas team breaking into an SDC subsidiary called Snowshoe Shipping with the help of May. As they walk through the courtyard, they thank May for her help, and she says that once Robin heard about Amity communication, she wouldn't shut up about it. So of course they were going to help get it up and running. She also says that she can afford to be away from Mantle for a little while because Fiona has their friends helping out. The mention of their friends brings a sad reaction to Blake's face and an upset or angry expression from Nora's. They enter the building and they see that it is staffed by Atlesian knights, but these knights are not loyal to the Atlas military. They're loyal to the Schnee Dust Company. And they see that they're loading cases of dust into pneumatic chutes that send them to different places in Atlas. There's some playful banter between Blake and Wise, where Blake asks her if there's any buildings in Atlas that her family doesn't own, before they start checking the different terminals of the warehouse for the one that'll send them to the military compound. Penny finds the terminal for Atlas Academy and tells Ruby that she doesn't like it when friends fight, which Ruby misinterprets as meaning that Penny doesn't like it that her and Yang are fighting. But when she tries to reassure Penny, Penny reveals that she was actually talking about the students and Winter and Ironwood, saying how they were friends, and then they weren't. They got attacked in that. Ruby tells her that what Ironwood said to her in the last episode, how if she doesn't come to Atlas, people will die because of her, was just him trying to hurt her into complying, and that while she may now have the responsibilities of being a maiden, she has still done everything that she can to protect Mantle. Nora finds the terminal for the military compound, and she asks Weiss what they need to do to get there. Weiss walks over to the chute and sits on the edge, telling them that all they need to do is lie down in the chute and have someone press the launch button. But before she can say anything else, Nora hears the word launch, and so she presses the button that says launch, and Wise gets sucked up the tube. This shocked everyone who was there, but only for a couple seconds before Nora gasps and then starts jumping up and down all excitedly.
If you lie back in the tube and press launch...
Now, since this is the last we see of this group, this episode, I want to say that I'm actually surprised that May is joining this team because, well, there was no sight of her in any of the trailers. There was no sight of any of the Happy Huntresses. So this was either because they didn't want it to be spoiled that the Happy Huntresses would play a more active role in the events of this chapter, well, this season, or maybe Weiss was going to be the last one to go up the chutes, so she could use her identity and last name to command one of the knights that was staffing the building to press the launch button when she was in the tube, and now May will have to stay back so she can launch the final student up to Atlas. We then cut to the slums under Atlas, and we see Fiona conducting all of their defenses by map and earpiece, talking to a guy named Crimson. The call ends and Joanna congratulates Fiona on how well she's conducting everyone and how Robin would be proud of what she's done so far. While Fiona sucks the map into her semblance, saying that with the stunt Joanna pulled on the news, maybe she should have a go at leading these people as well. And the two of them leave the tent to see the newest group of Mantle civilians, surprised that Mantle team had managed to clear out an entire sector already. The sector that they cleared was Sector 7, and their fast work caused Fiona to do that cute excited hopping that she's done a few times throughout her appearances. Fiona says that she's surprised that they were able to work as efficiently as they were without their entire teams being present, which causes Yang to abruptly say that we're doing fine, and Ren just walks away. And then Fiona informs them about how exactly they're housing all the people in the slums, how some are being housed with the faunas, they're trying to get the dust mines inhabitable and that. But before the conversation has a chance to change topics, they get interrupted by the Badge of Faunus man from episode 1, who is actually revealed to be Fiona's uncle, informing them that a fight had broken out, which Joanna happily goes to sort out. Fiona's uncle is voiced by Gus Sorolla, and I'm saying he's a Badge of Faunus because there's the fact that his hair is black and white striped. It's very similar to the markings on a badger, and other people say that he's a mole faunus or a bear faunus, but the paws that he has, they don't exactly match with what a bear has, and they actually have pads on the bottom, and their claws aren't webbed, so it's not a mole paw. We also see Oscar waving to the man with a smile as he's running up to inform them of the fight, so it's nice that Oscar got to say hello to the man who was helping him a few hours earlier. Fiona then gets another call from Crimson, who tells her that there's a group of Grimm entering from the east. Fiona quickly pulls the map back out of her semblance and stares at it. But before she can start coordinating anyone to go take care of it, Yang volunteers her team. I also want to briefly mention the amount of detail and attention that the animators put into the ears of the faunas. Like, it's been said many times how you can tell Blake's emotions by her ears, much like you can a cat, but Fiona's ears as well, because her right ear, just as before Crimson speaks, her right ear actually twitches, like it's hearing the sound of an earpiece activating. And while she's distractedly looking at the map, when Yang speaks, you actually hear her, well, see her left ear perk up, and then she looks up at Yang like, yeah, I can hear that, I'm going to acknowledge that I hear you. It then cuts to Yang on her hoverbike, kiting a Terax through the streets of Mantle, while Ren drives Oscar a street over. Yang drives the Terax under a bridge that is next to where the two streets intersect, and Ren pulls out in front of it, allowing Oscar to throw his wind dust grenade under it, exploding it up into the bridge, which collapses and pins it to the ground. Now this grenade is very similar to ones they used like World War I, World War II, that has a stick and a canister of the explosive powder or dust that gets lobbed rather than one that gets pitched. And it's not exactly what I'd expect to see from Atlas, like maybe Vacuo or Menagerie or maybe even Mistral, but I'd expect Atlas to actually have little grenades that, well, look like modern grenades, or maybe some future tech grenades, not early 20th century grenades. Anyway, the camera then pans around to behind Yang and Ren to show Jean standing balanced on his bike before riding cavalier style towards the Grim and slicing it down before he almost falls off the bike. Yang calls into Fiona to inform her that they've dispatched of all the Grim, but she's quickly informed that there are now Grim coming in to the west of the city, and that the huntsmen there could use some help. Yang sighs, then tells her that they'll head on over, and while Oscar comments on the fact that while Salem's forces may not be moving in yet, the fear that they're causing is enough to attract the local Grim, which I find interesting because you'd think that if Salem's main fleet isn't going in, then she'd be telling the local Grims to not go in as well. But Ren notices that they've got a few sabers approaching. Before the sabers and huntsmen are able to fight, however, the sabers suddenly stop dead in their tracks, and then they turn around and run away as if in fear. As the kids comment on how weird it is that a creature that only acts on a sole instinct to attack and destroy, how weird it is it would run away, Oscar and Ren are suddenly knocked off their bike by a creature jumping down on them. We see that the creature is the Bloodhound Grim. It's credited as the Hound, so I was damn near close with my naming of it. Anyway, who proceeds to attack only Oscar, slamming him against the ground a few times and stomping on him to quickly shatter his aura and knock him unconscious. Before we get to talking about what happens next, I want to say a few things. The first is the counter that I have in this corner. It's actually counting the times that you can see the hound in the background of the shot. Is how it's following Oscar as seen in these three images over here. And the second is that the hound, it doesn't set off any of the grim warnings that we've seen throughout the show so far. Like the grim alarms in the street with their blaring alarm. It didn't set any of those off. Ozpin senses in Oscar's head, who warns him of dangers coming to him. It warned him of Hazel and the ship approaching. It didn't warn him of the Bloodhound, and Ren's ability to use his aura to sense when things are approaching near him, like with Tyrion or the King Tajitu or that. Though the last one could be because of Ren's chaotic mental state, not allowing him to focus in on the things around him. While standing over Oscar's body, the hound's body starts bubbling and cracking as its form begins to shift. What once was like a pitbull-like creature in appearance has now turned into a bipedal creature similar to a beowulf, but with a different head shape and longer limbs. He then picks up Oscar, and when Yang charges him with her bike for an attack, he thrusts Oscar out between them, causing Yang to drop her attack to avoid hitting her friend. It then grabs her head as she goes past and throws her against a nearby wall, before being shot by Yang. Not Yang, Ren. But we see that the shots aren't doing anything, because when Ren's grappling blades get stuck in the hound's body, we see that his body isn't exactly solid. It's more of a viscous, gooey, almost like a moving form of one of the black pools. Ren launches himself towards the creature using the grapple ropes, and he brings the hand, not holding Oscar, in front of him. It passes through Ren's cable, adding to the liquid-like appearance of its body, and we actually see that parts of its arm aren't actually connected, because about here and here there's two lines that you can actually see through, and there's several holes throughout his other arms. The hound then swings its arm out like the Nakalave and knocks Ren into a different wall. He really likes throwing people against walls, doesn't it? Jon pulls out his sword to charge the monster, but before he can, Yang calls out to say that it's using Oscar as a shield. As Jon questions that Grim aren't that smart, Ren points his gun at it, only to have Oscar thrust between them in his direction, and yells at the hound to give Oscar back. The hound brings Oscar close to him, shielding him with his arm like one would protect a small child, which I guess Oscar is, as its neck starts bubbling and cracking, and it says no before starting to walk away. That's right, a creature of Grimm, a mindless creature that only acts on a single instinct. It spoke. And it wasn't like a cat or a dog in our world making a noise that sounds like it could have been words. This creature actively gave itself vocal cords just so it could answer Ren's demand. This obviously stunned everyone present, but the hound wasn't done, because its new vocal cords allowed it to properly express the pain that it feels as it suddenly crashes into the ground, its shoulder blades bubbling and cracking before goo explodes off its back, some of which landed on Oscar's face. That doesn't seem like it'll be a good thing, and probably has lasting consequences that will be explored in future episodes. And it's revealed that the Grimm, it gave itself wings, not dissimilar to the pair that we see Salem with in the opening. The last we see of this episode is the hound picking Oscar up in its mouth and flying away as Mantle Team chase after it on their bikes, with Yang telling Fiona that they won't be able to make it to the Grim in the West. Let me just say, before I get to this ending, that I called it. As soon as I saw Mantle Team chasing after the flying Grim in the tundra, I knew that it would have taken Oscar, both by the fact that why would they be chasing the Grim so far away from the city, and why wasn't Oscar on one of the bikes? I also want to make note that the Hound was voiced by Jason Liebrecht, who voices Crow these past 2 seasons, that being 7 and 8. Not sure if this is going to be of any importance or not, but felt it needed to be said. And Jason is now directly linked to 2 creatures that everyone thought to be mindless until it spoke. He voices Darby in the English dub of My Hero Academia, and Darby is the one who sent the high-end Nomu Hood after Endeavour and Hawks, so directly linked to that. Now, I want this video to be solely about the breakdown, so I'm not going to say much here about my thoughts on the episode. If you want to see my reaction to the Hound speaking, or the Hound on its own, or just any other part of the episode, go watch my reaction this weekend, releasing at 5 PM GMT, the same time that most RWBY tubers do release their reactions. But this episode was even more hype than episode 1, which was a strong season opening. Now, I know that one of the problems I have with this is that I have a bad tendency to read a sentence word by word rather than the whole thing, so the way that I inflect words don't always match the tone that I wanted the sentence to have when I wrote it out. So you'll see minor flickers in the way that I'm saying words or on my face when I get to a word that, that doesn't fit with how I was saying this sentence. But if you like the video and want to see more, if you have any important details in the episode that I missed, or you have any other tips on how to improve this, either the way I read the sentences or the video as whole, comment them down below because I'd love to discuss them with you. So, until next time, catch you in the next one.